Okay, we're checking in again with State Representative Tacky Chan of Quincy for our Friday Tacky Talks. Hello, Tacky. It's Friday the 13th.
Yeah, Joe, it's a lucky number, lucky day, huh?
We'll see. We'll see. It's not over yet. I guess lucky in the fact that we're here. Unlucky in the fact that we're in the second surge, definitely now in the pandemic, right?
Sadly, that is very apparent. State cases continue to be up. I know there was one day that was a 3-day total, not a 1-day total, but still mounted over 2,000. And sadly, we've crossed the $10,000 person death threshold. We had talked about this last week, how we're creeping up there, and a couple of weeks back, how I was trying to be optimistic, and I'm 1/4 the size of that as being optimistic, but that's no longer the case. And this country is well over 250,000-ish deaths, and 10,000 come from Massachusetts. That's insignificant for a state that's 6.8 million-ish people. And the two states with 1 million positive confirmed infections already in this country, and the death count is going up everywhere. There's more lockdowns in place, but it's isolated lockdowns. I don't think a state will ever close. I do think that there would be isolated shutdowns like you do in other countries. If there's a hot spot, they're going to go in and close those hot spots where they try to see what it is. But also like to remind folks, just because the test results are high doesn't mean that it accounts for all infections. There are people out there that are asymptomatic, people have no symptoms at all, and people that could be continue infectious, which is, again, wear your mask. It keeps your germs to yourself, so I don't have to get them. Wash your hands, wear your mask, try to limit contact, keep your distance from folks. This is a continual message that we've been talking about since the summertime. And nothing's more sobering than the fact that, when 10,000, the governor opened a few hospitals as a precaution, and hospitalizations in both the ICU and regular hospitalizations up dramatically. So, it's real. It's going to be real in our face a second time.
Yeah, he did make a point to stress that it's not as bad as it was in April and May. However, he doesn't want it to get that bad either.
I think the general population in this state has been, mostly very good. I think most all of us are very good. There's those outliers that you see in the news that create unnecessary drama, thinking more about themselves than the public and not believing in the science and the medicine, which is also disturbing because I said before, it's the state of our healthcare. There's a reason why we have such high rates of obesity, why we have issues regarding controlling diabetes, and also other chronic health issues that can't be addressed if you actually listen to your doctor about it and ways to mitigate it. And with the coronavirus, those underlying conditions that we have that's very prevalent in our country may help save your life if you get it, because those underlying conditions are less severe or doesn't exist. So, it's kind of a reflection of how we view medicine and science, of how we take care of ourselves individually, as well as trying to take care of each other as a unit.
Yeah, well, and now there's evidence too that if you just want to be selfish about it, that wearing a mask can protect you from other people's germs as well.
Yeah, the belief is that if the particles hit the mask, and there's not like a large number, like someone didn't like just spew like vomit on you or something. Really a lot. The belief is it should be able to deter some of those particles on the outside. But then again, it shouldn't deter people from wearing a mask because you think the other person's protected from when they wear a mask, because the air still comes in from the sides. Yep. And above them. So it's not a conventional aerosol, meaning the aerosol sits in the air for periods, but it still kind of has a spray effect. So yeah, it reduces the possibility, but it doesn't eliminate a possibility, which is why when two people wear masks, the air circulation is much lower between the two people, which reduces the possibility. And of course, you still should, wash your hands, keep, be aware of your surface contacts, and things like that. Yeah. So, as you head to the winter months, people are wearing winter gloves. If you feel like you should wear gloves, and when you go to the store or not, you have winter gloves now. You just clean those. Again, I have hand wipes and hand sanitizer in the car. Something you can wipe down all the surfaces with the same hand sanitizer. Also, the stores are giving you hand sanitizer and hand wipes. I've seen people happily using those going through the store. So, they're retailers and are providing you the ability to take care of yourself. So you should really take advantage of it.
Yeah, that's not where it's spreading. It's been quite clear. It's formal, informal gatherings in private homes. That really is where the bulk of the spread's happening.
Well, the social distancing aspect, right? People are willing to stand a couple shopping cart lengths from each other in the store, and you're constantly on the move. So it reduces length of time of contact. But when you're indoors with other people, even if you're social distancing inside your own home, you're in a contained space. The air doesn't move the same way, and there's not as much movement. So it increases more respiratory fluids, traveling through the air. And if you wear masks indoors, that reduces that possibility. But again, it's length of time. You still expel some air in air coming in through the sides of your mask. So unless you got like a full hazmat suit on of your own contained air supply, I mean, it's very difficult for you not to infect an area if you're in there long enough next to each other in a contained space. So I think that's why in these close contact gatherings for long periods will have a higher chance of infection. Infection rate's directly correlation to infection plus time.
Right. What happened at the State House this week, Jackie? Anything exciting since last we chatted? I know that budget discussions are pretty much wrapped up.
Yeah, we talked a bit about the budget last week. I gave you some of the highlights. And we actually achieved a 2-day budget debate via telephone. We continue to standard practice of consolidated amendments, debating our amendments via telephone this time, as well as speaking to the Ways and Means Chair throughout this entire situation through Microsoft Network, Zoom, and regular phone calls and texting. So we had multiple methods to try to reach the Ways and Means Chair and the Ways and Means Chair staff. The Ways and Means was able to figure out how to get small amounts of money to various people, including myself. I got $25,000 for Germantown Neighborhood Center and $75,000 for Quincy Asian Resources through the House budget. It's not the money levels we had in the past, but at this stage of the game, I'm happy to get any amounts. We have about $50,000 for the hazmat unit at the fire department. So that's state's been funding that equipment and training at the Quincy Fire Department. And we also got $95,000 for overtime patrols for the summertime again, which is generally about the same amount we get every year. So the summertime obviously is a long way at this point, it feels like. But next year, if things come to normal and even not come back to normal, the need for state police patrols on Queen Shore Drive and First Park will still be needed.
Yeah. How is the C Street, Quincy Shore Drive intersection project going? Is that fully funded now?
Yeah, I mean, I got that money. God, that was back in like 2012.
Okay.
14. Everything seems so long ago now.
Yeah.
So I mean, I got the initial startup with like 1.2 million, 2 million in startup funds that we were fortunate to get through the state procurement process for their money and get that project started. The intersection looks great. I drove by it about a week and a half ago just to do the look through, and they did an incredible job. And the second phase of C Street project, I know some of the neighbors aren't happy with that, but the road does need to be done in traffic improvements, and it's going to be very painful given all the other projects the city's going through, including gas main changes, the seawall. They're doing paving upgrades. I mean, there's a lot going on down in the neighborhood. So, they've returned to us for more funding for the rest of C Street. We got some funding in the transportation bond bill, I think it's about $3.5 million I asked for. But the Senate may have asked for a little bit more money. It's been real confusing right now because of this pandemic. It's really screwing up how we do business. And we don't have a clear funding mechanism for the transportation bond bill, which is why it's sitting in conference committee so long. Again, to remind folks, this is an $18 billion plus bond bill. In my 25 years of government, I've never seen an $18 billion bond bill issued by us. It's not the big dig bond bill. Those are separate bonds. So it was done through the old Turnpike Authority. So to fund the $18 billion, we need a dedicated revenue stream to fund part of it. And given the pandemic has screwed up rental cars, gas tax usage, ride shares, and corporate taxes aren't really good right now. Our funding mechanisms to back that $18 billion bond is not going to be meeting projections in this cycle or FY22. So I'm not even sure how we're going to back this bond. We could just bite the bullet, issue the bond, and then continue the funding mechanism in the hopes, FY23 things come back to normal.
Mm.
And then we just don't bond. The government doesn't borrow as much money in the interim, waiting for the revenues to actually back the bond. So I'm not sure. Conference committee's got to figure it out.
Wait and see on that one. I know the mayor is here in Quincy is concerned about that as well. I talked to him earlier this week. He estimates about a $10 million loss in revenue, total loss in revenue. So he's concerned about what that will do to the property tax rates for next year.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, every time a storefront closes, that affects the commercial property tax rate. The ability for people to pay their taxes results in default. And the city will most likely be very cooperative on deferment, which is, once again, lost property tax revenue. You can't pay your property taxes. I mean, that's what happens. Same thing on my level. I mean, every time someone loses a job, they either can't pay income tax or they pay lesser income tax because of the unemployment. Unemployment is taxable. It's 100% taxable. So people should be mindful as April hits and you got your unemployment benefits from the summer, that is taxable income. But it's not the same volume that you would have had if you had your job.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why FY22 is actually the scary of the 2 years.
Yep.
Compared to FY21 because of the full impacts of felt of the economy because our fiscal year begins on July 1st.
Yeah, and of course that's assuming that the pandemic's over by then, or at least has waned.
Well, there's some promising about a couple of vaccines. You guys saw AstraZeneca, Pfizer has put out a report of 90% effectiveness, which is even greater than the flu shot, which is about 50% effectiveness. Obviously, there's more studies and testing to be done. But that's actually a tricky one. We talked about supply chain problems before. We're getting vials and needles and people to inject you. This is a 2-injection vaccine, and it has to be refrigerated at negative 94 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's not your standard freezer. So UPS has to now retrofit a whole bunch of trucks to be refrigerated. They have to make special containers to cart this material. If the vaccine is above that temperature, it's no longer a usable vaccine. So you have to know how to eject quickly. And obviously, you got to replace needles, alcohol pads, a whole lot of things. And certain communities around the country do not have, what we have in Massachusetts. Rural communities in particular have small community hospitals, very small community health centers that are hundreds of miles apart. And rural America is now getting hit hard. They thought they could be shielded from this because, they're in rural America. You're 100 miles from a major city, 200 miles from a major city. But, given the fact that we do need to move around and our commerce does move around by vehicle, trucks and so forth, it was only a matter of time that it reaches those rural communities. So there's a lot of logistics to consider. Moderna is now moving to starting, phase 3. They're looking at some positive results. China has a vaccine they're testing in other countries in a kind of a weird program where it's like, we'll give you a first chance to buy, but we want to test our vaccine on your citizens. Yeah. And of course, the Russians are now claiming they have a 92% effective vaccine. But there's been no published documents, as far as I'm aware of phase 1 or 2 trials, much less a phase 3 trial. So who knows if it's real or not? Right. Johnson & Johnson's still out there. They had slowed down theirs because of adverse effects of the patient, and they're starting up again. So big pharma. I know people hate big pharma, but big pharma is right now trying to get this safe, and the only big pharma can manufacture this many doses, and even then, producing a minimum 5 billion doses, and you have to make, in Pfizer's case, twice. This is two doses, 5 billion twice, so that's 10 billion doses, just to get through this, civilized part of the world, much less even talk about third world developed countries that won't have any refrigeration whatsoever.
It's a daunting task for sure, and it's going to take a while to weed out, I'm sure. That's why I think the estimates of next spring to have a widely available vaccine are not out of the question.
Yeah, and that still may be daunting to get to. And this come back to supply chain issues. So obviously, no surprise, countries are manufacturing PPE, needles, vials, so forth, all kinds of medical equipment and medicine are prioritizing their own countries first. Which again mean we need to get our supply chain manufacturing up locally, which again goes back to the major corporations in this country to try to figure out ways of building medical supplies locally very quickly in this country, or even its close neighbors like Canada, for example. Our cooperative neighbors, for lack of a better term. So unless the current national situation with our president continues to degrade that with his behavior. But which is a whole other part of the conversation. But yeah, I mean, that's part of it too. We can get our needles, gloves, and stuff made in the USA, and that would help out on supply chain and distribution.
Yeah. A different topic, Jackie. What do you think about the proposed cuts at the MBTA?
Yeah, I've been getting some emails and calls from people about, don't cut the T, maintain services. I had talked to a friend last night about this, and believe it or not, in my time in office, 10 years, has resulted. This is my third. This is my third MBTA service reduction. Some people would even notice. For example, the bus at Beechwood Knoll has been there since I was a child. That was one of the first lines cut. I don't think anybody even noticed it was gone in that instance. Now, cutting the Peninsula, the 216 in particular, could be more problematic for me. They had reduced service before. That was the second round of reductions of service. And I didn't really hear a whole lot of problems, but this third round of service reduction could be more problematic, particularly if you're an essential worker that needs to get transportation. But also, given the telecommuting and the change of how we do business now, has also reduced people needing to go into Boston. So I think one of my major concerns, really, obviously the local rides and the ones that get to the MBTA stations, to Quincy Center, but how they're going to get around locally to go to work, and I do have some concerns about that. The T is looking at 400 million plus shortfall just from the lack of ridership. Change economy and fear of riding the T. No mass, no entry. People don't like that, but you're in a contained space in a metal tube inside tunnels. So you want to talk about no airflow. And even though there's less people riding T, at least you got a little more social distancing in the T. But the bus doesn't give you the same level of distance inside. So this is a bit of a quandary, and we allowed the MBTA and the close the books, the budget. We had a sub budget last week to close the books on FY20, and we allowed the T to use bond money to pay some of their salaries, which is, again, we don't encourage. But given the circumstances, we're going to bite the bullet and eat the cost later on the interest of those salaries to try to keep some jobs going. So the T is still, obviously trying to preserve jobs, and cutting service is one way to do that. Perhaps when we get through the pandemic and the economy comes to some form of normality, we can restore those services. But the Hingham Ferry is going to be cut out because there's not enough ridership. You can't meet a certain volume of ridership. The ferry is privately contracted. If it exceeds the cost of the field, it becomes impractical.
It's costing money to run it, exactly, yeah.
They're bleeding money. They won't be in business anymore.
Right. Part of the plan is not to raise fares. Do you think that's a mistake?
It's raise fare with less people riding. You may not even make enough money back. When we raised our fares, you had 95% capacity, so the revenue stream is much more consistent. If you're looking at capacity of under 50%, and you raise fares, you won't make up enough money anyway.
Okay.
So unless you raise the fares astronomically, it's not going to work.
Which would be, prohibitive, I'm sure. It'd force more people away.
Well, even the parking fees, people, Wallaston Station, where I live, fills up before 8 p.m. Anybody who's listening knows this. Maybe even sooner if it's when the economy is really hot, by 7:30, 7 o'clock it was full. But nowadays it's almost 3/4 empty. So those are revenues that aren't there anymore.
Yeah.
And when two businesses start to not be able to get advertising because they're either out of business or they have cost constraints, So, those annoying ads you see on the MBTA, whether in the tunnel, on the flickering ad, or, on the buses, or inside the trains, you may not see as much advertising. The economy continues to be very difficult, even for major corporations. So that's also lost revenue.
Yeah, commuter rail, of course, is being slashed back as well. So it's all modes that are being impacted. And there's, as you say, there's even less motor vehicle traffic because people are telecommuting.
That's absolutely correct. Our change of doing business among ourselves, that doesn't have to be in person, means you have less people in the office. And given the fact the schools are going more remote, obviously we've had friends who've had child care issues, working remotely. But we also try to address in the budget child care issues regarding people that have to be in person, our essential workers, people that have to do direct retail because that's the only way they can do the business. They're not set up for online sales. So, we try to address some of those issues in the budget to make sure there's enough money in those areas. But yeah, I mean, we're changing how we do business, and transportation has been an adverse impact. I mean, I tell people housing, transportation are the two keys for our economy. Housing is still in short supply in specific locations, unless you're in a college area, which is right now in abundance. And people aren't taking transportation because, this is a world we're living in.
What is on the House agenda coming up for the rest of the year?
It continues to be prioritization of the conference committee, any COVID-related issues. We moved some smaller bills forward. So, for example, there's a bill that bans the use of certain types of flame retardant materials on things like mattresses, which is actually toxic when it actually catches on fire. So, yeah, so we moved that bill out of committee. Out of the House. I think it was 2 Tuesdays ago at this point, or two Wednesdays ago, 2 Mondays ago, I believe. So, I mean, we're moving some smaller bills forward. I mean, it doesn't, grab the Boston Globe headline, but we're moving some very small pieces. I mean, I'm obviously preparing yet another set of public hearings. I think I have one next Friday. After my call with you next Friday, the committee will have another set of public hearings. My committee staff was still working on some research projects that will be done in December for me to review. But we're slowing down the rest of the stuff as the year comes to an end, and swearing in day shows up this first Wednesday after the first Tuesday of January. So I'm not even sure how we're going to do swearing in day. And for newly elected reps and senators, swearing in day is very, very special. You only get one. So, those are other things. So I also lose my chairmanship when the year turns. So when swearing day hits, all committees reset. So I will lose my chairmanship. So we're trying to get the committee staff and I trying to get some stuff done before I lose my chair. At the beginning of the cycle, I become an acting temporary chairman, just holding it together without any official capacity until the caucus votes for chairmanships, which is again another logistical issue. Yeah. As we go into next year, as well as electing a new speaker and electing the clerk of the House.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah.
Just a few things, yeah.
A few things, and a bill filing deadlines in the 3rd week of January. So among our staff, we're already discussing how we're going to try to handle January.
Sure. Of course, now that the ballot questions have been determined, one of those comes under your purview, right, in your committee.
Yeah, I've been taking quite a few press calls on that lately. It's surprising that we got press calls prior to this question being done. So everyone knows about right to repair at this point because you got bombarded by every advertising to the point you're probably nauseated seeing it in back-to-back commercials. The short answer is your car can still get repaired at a third-party repair shop. Okay, that was before this ballot question and after this ballot question. That has not changed. So if you're listening to this and you're concerned about not getting your car repaired, don't worry. You're fine. Third-party shops can still get the training and equipment the same as any car dealership. The issue, again, is the wireless issue about the ability of the car to transmit your information to the manufacturer and the accusation that the third-party repair shops claim that they're sending information to dealerships to contact you to have the cars fixed there. Now, let's be practical about this. You've been to a new car dealership. Anyone's bought a car, you only see 3 bays. You have 1,500 plus third-party repair shops. There's no way in a practical universe that dealerships can handle that many cars, and we have 1,500 independent repair shops. Okay, let's get that myth out of the way. That being said, there's concern about how to retrieve data off the computer in your car regarding repair data. I believe the current statute already allows that for change technology, but I think we could try to address that. The online platform is the tricky part, where people can get at your data wirelessly to your car or through a website, or I don't even know yet because I don't understand what the statute is trying to tell me. But there's a data security issue. So the public should be aware that you voted for a ballot question that allows third-party repair shops to access your car data without your permission. Okay? So if you're listening to this podcast, just be aware you voted for a ballot question that allows third-party repair shops to go into your car data without your permission. There's nothing in the statute that says your permission is required. So if you're one of those people that don't like the legislature changing ballot questions, then you obviously support people just going into your car and taking your stuff. So I hope to get phone calls saying, please stop that.
I was just going to ask, will the legislature take action and change that?
We're having discussions with the House, Senate, and the governor's office regarding can we delay the law's implementation so we can have some time to figure out the actual practical technology aspects and build a law around the technology, the realistic of the technology. We discussed, before we started this call, the legislature is reactionary because I can't tell you what the problems are yet till I see the problem.
Right.
And now we have a problem because a ballot question passed. And I need a new learning curve regarding the reality of how this technology works and how to protect consumers in particular. I'm not interested in your third-party repair shops, nor the manufacturers, nor the car dealers. I'm interested in you, the consumer, how to protect your information while able to get the information necessary to have your car repaired, which I still believe the current statute already allows that because the statute literally says that they can get the information. So that's the least of my concerns. My concern is people be able to get your information in your car about your knowledge.
Yeah. So the moral of the story is drive an old car.
Absolutely. If you got a car that's 20 years old, you should be okay.
Aside from the fact that it's probably falling apart, nobody could access your data because there isn't any.
Well, my last car got 14 years. Those people that know me knows I had this old blue Passat from 2003. After I got my new car in 2 years ago, so 2018. So, I try to make my car last, but the frame was literally coming apart at that point. I mean, I had the car inspected and the entire bottom parts is going to collapse. I mean, there's no practicality to put more money in the car. And those of us that live close to the ocean, as opposed to people that live further much inland, knows the impact of salt water on cars in Quincy, anywhere in the coastline. So we have that double whammy that people in Western Mass doesn't have the same impact. And of course we have winter, which just brutalizes your car.
That's right. They get a lot more snow and road salt out that way. So yes, it's it's pick your poison.
Well, exactly it. So I mean, those who know me, try to stretch things out. But even I had to get a new car. There was actually a lot of new car sales this past summertime during the pandemic when people got their $1,200 from feds. And people should be aware that you buy a new car, you don't need to service as much because new cars are built so well. They don't need to be serviced as often. So you're saying, well, why buy a new car? Having employment issues because your savings on the service area is what you're saving money on.
Yeah, most of them are much more fuel efficient as well, depending on what you buy. And there's a lot more choices in hybrid now than there ever was too.
Yeah, my car is at least 50 to 100% as more efficient than my Passat from 2003.
Sure.
I've invested much less money, even though I'm paying a loan on the car. So, because I was putting in $4,000, $5,000 a year on trying to keep the older car going at one point, and that became just economically nonsensical.
Right. Keep that up, and eventually you've paid for a new car with your old car. Yeah.
Exactly. So I know people are having a tough time these days, but you got to start really looking at your bills and really figure out the totality of your costs, including maintenance.
Yeah.
And this is a good time to remind people, winter's here. The sun is going down faster, and your energy consumption at home is going to go up again, like we discovered in the pandemic beginning last time. So your water usage will continue to be high, obviously, because we're home more often. But also your energy consumption is going up because they're losing daylight. People should look at, not plugging their equipment when they don't need to plug in particularly cell phones and laptops. You use the battery as much as possible. It's healthy for the battery anyways, to be discharged every so often. And just, look at weatherizing your home, because more often to try to save on gas and heating bills. So be prepared, everybody, look at some energy cost increases on the electric side in particular as we hit the winter months. And you can take the precautions now to address it.
Yeah. Speaking of energy, the third-party electricity provider issue is cropping up again, and I only know that because I was solicited at my home by somebody who knocked on the door and said, "Let me see your electric bill."
Yeah, do not give people personal information under any circumstances. Again, the census is now over. There are no census takers. There's no other folks. There's no campaign anymore, so people are not knocking on your doors. They should be knocking on your doors, to be honest with you, in the middle of a pandemic, to be perfectly frank. So, yes, again, do not give bill numbers, financial information, your electric bills, your financial information. The DPU has been issuing new guidelines, regulations this past September, an implementation this winter for door-to-door sales and solicitation on any third-party energy supply folks. Again, you don't feel comfortable, don't do it.
Right.
Do your homework. You can contact my office. You can contact the DPU. You can contact the AG's office regarding your concerns on third-party suppliers. Energy is much more complicated than people give it for. I love folks talk about electricity with me, and they explain how electrical billing works and things like that, and people's heads start to spin. So going into your full knowledge about what you're getting into is very involved. People don't buy cell phones on a whim to do some homework. Electricity should also be the same level of scrutiny. So again, there's no campaign, there's no census takers. You shouldn't have. You should tell people who come to your door to leave the material behind, and we'll talk some other day.
Yeah, it was unfortunate because they misrepresented themselves by claiming they were from one of the utility companies, one of the major ones, and they obviously were not.
No, absolutely. This is a fraud scheme that's been going on. And after we got off this webcast here, this podcast, I need to get the information from you exactly who it is.
Happy to help you with that, Jackie.
Yeah, there's going to be a phone call by me. So.
Very good. Anything else we should touch on? I really am curious to get your take on what's going on nationally with the election. Yeah,
we haven't watched this much CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, ABC News I've ever seen. Watching CNA, which I've talked multiple times, is my English news channel over in Singapore, and DW over in Germany. And it's been pretty different. I'm being polite. You guys can choose your own words at home. It's not really just about the conceding issue with President Trump. It's really about the transition of power. And I agree with every security expert. The longer we do not display the ability to transfer power puts us in a disadvantage to have the new president-elect come in, on the boots, ground running, and put his team in place right away with the knowledge of what's happened before, and to continue the work that's going on now. Suddenly people realize we didn't know what a GSA was until now, right? All these terms we didn't know, general, service agency. We didn't know it was that important. Yep. The GSA runs everything. The unglamorous parts of government, right? You're not a Secretary of Defense. These are the administrators that make the day-to-day wheels going, that we now discover is essential for a transition of power. So, for example, had one of my relatives text over saying, look, we're going to end democracy in America because it looks like you're having a military coup. I'm like, no, we have a civilian military. Most people don't realize that in third world countries and communist governments, the military is co-equal branch of the other branches of government. Yeah. They're a co-equal branch, meaning they have a say in the operation of government. Our military is subservient to the three branches of government, including you and me as voters who vote for congressional members. So they're not a co-equal branch of government. And historically, the U.S. military is not getting involved in local politics.
Correct. Yeah.
That includes public displays, which the general that was with with the president at the church in D.C., regret it. That should never happen. It was not a military-related program, and but he is the commander in chief, and that is disturbing. So there's certain foreign interests you read in the news all the time that have been influencing elections, particularly Russia. But China, Iran, and other countries with cyber capacity like North Korea, most likely have been attacking our systems to try to influence the elections through fake advertising and conspiracy theories. Sounds familiar?
Mm-hmm.
All of them are domestic conspiracy theories. They're planted by other folks, including people who are basically paid by foreign governments to plant conspiracy theories. So, there's a lot of interference going on. And I think one of the telltale signs of countries supporting President Trump was how long they took to call President-elect Biden. China and Russia in particular, the other two major military powers in the world, did not call President-elect Biden, and even the Chinese President Xi did not call President Biden or sent a note over. They only had the foreign ministry do it. So it's a clear indication of that. And people ask me why. Well, it's easy. Standard Cold War politics is what they're all playing right now. You have a domestic unstable situation, which is how America is perceived by the rest of the world as we're domestically unstable. And instability only benefits our enemies and our competitors. So people always say, "Oh, China and Russia are looking for better trade status and this and that." No, I mean they're looking for the best deal that works for their countries, not for our country. And the president's continued behavior only reinforces their desire to have an unstable domestic situation. As we withdraw our status in the world stage by not being a leader to WHO, not being a leader to the world, the W20 or the W8, not being a leader at NATO, not being a leader in the Pacific as the Chinese keep building islands in the South China Sea, or helping our longtime allies, the Japanese, the South Koreans, and other countries in semi-autonomous areas in the Pacific. And we still have the Crimea problem in Ukraine, and of course, all of Africa, Northern Africa, and like Libya and other places, as well as Syria, that we've basically just decided that we're not going to be a foreign player anymore. So, there's people don't think about foreign affairs as a major part of our lives, but our security at home is so we don't have military conflicts is very dependent on our foreign affairs capacity.
And not to mention the fact that we're in the middle of a global pandemic, which is really not being addressed right here at home.
Yeah, as we talked earlier, I mean, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, three of the biotech companies of not even a dozen globally that are working on vaccine. And we have very stringent testing. I know people complain about FDA about their slowness, but we're talking about a new vaccine here. We want to have confidence that people will have a positive impact by this vaccine, which is not the same standards being used in Russia or China. The EU, European Union, and the US have much more closely aligned FDA standards as well as Canada. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it sounds very Cold War, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Where you have the traditional Western democracies in a pandemic with higher standards versus a couple of communist countries with large economies and military capacity also competing against us in a whole new type of diplomacy, which is now called vaccine diplomacy. So will we get there first? I don't care. We just want to have the ability to treat this.
Yeah, it's reminiscent of the space race, back in the 60s.
Yeah, the references, warp speed and Sputnik. Mm-hmm. How many people know what warp speed is unless you're a Star Trek nerd?
That's true.
If you're a Star Wars nerd, there's no warp speed. I mean, I'm a Star Trek, Star Wars guy. I'm not like a trivia guy that good, but I do, big part of it. I mean, watching The Mandalorian tonight, and eagerly waiting for the next episode. But I've yet to pay for CBS because I just can't justify paying for another subscription service to watch the Star Trek Discovery and other, Picard. I really wanted to watch Picard, but I mean, I'm just looking at the price. I'm like, maybe I'll do it at Christmas time and just do it. But paying for the streaming service. But yeah, I mean, they're using terminology which I always find very interesting.
Yeah.
That pop culture related to the general public. Um, so it's like if you said "Beam me up, Scotty," people may know that better than Warp Speed.
True.
So but it's become a PR campaign, right? And which is unfortunate. We're here to save lives. Not be worried about a PR campaign of who looks good.
Yeah, every time I read how many, lives could be saved if people had worn masks earlier and if there had been a national mask mandate and, if how many lives could have been saved, it's really disheartening to think that it was so politicized rather than, just based on science.
Yeah, in places like France and Germany and Italy, there's been protests against masks. England, they generally come from fringe groups. Again, do not believe in science, do not believe in medicine. I talked last time about the fact that people are pushing this herd mentality idea, this false narrative that if we just ignore it, we all going to become immune. If that's so great and your loved one dies, I don't know what to tell you. Clearly, herd immunity doesn't work, right? You need 90% plus population to achieve a degree of immunity. This is what the vaccine is about. The vaccine is about achieving herd immunity. And if you don't believe in vaccines, I mean, even though you probably had at least four vaccination shots when you were a baby in this country, which is required for you to go to school. So you already have vaccines, most likely, unless you're over the age of 60. The reality is that, we need to vaccinate 95% of the population to create that type of herd immunity. And we don't know if it's a continual booster shots. We don't know if it's a one and done or two and done. There's still a lot of science that need to be done out there. And we have some positive news, of course. I mean, Redivica, which is this very small amount available medicine, less than 50,000 doses of treatment. The president had one of 10 people actually received this experimental treatment when he got COVID-19. Obviously, he's a world leader. He gets access to, he's an important person. He gets access to this medicine. But I mean, there's also been antibiotic medicine that's been now approved by FDA for emergency use. So not just the vaccine, but also the therapies, the ability to treat the symptoms to give your body a chance to fight the disease and recover. COVID-19 breaks down the cell walls in your lungs. Once the cell wall breaks down, all your bacteria that's naturally occurring in your body goes in there. You get an infection, pneumonia hits, and things start to really get bad. Triggers all kinds of other issues. So, again, I mean, this is wintertime is our illness season, narrow virus, colds, flus, and a myriad of other issues that we have. If that's compounded with having COVID-19, that's just going to be so much worse.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest concerns is, when the first outbreak began, it was turning into the nicer weather. So outdoors was an option, that window is just quickly closing now.
Exactly. And hopefully, the spread of the flu and other viruses we normally deal with in the wintertime will be lesser because we're indoors more, we're limiting contact, we're wearing a mask, we're washing our hands. I don't have kids, but I have friends that have kids. Actually, almost all my friends have kids now. And we talk about all the pink eye they bring back from home or from school, and they bring back a neurovirus and it moves through the family and all that. I mean, with limited schooling and less contact, hopefully they'll reduce those viruses from moving around in your own family.
Right.
But again, if you get like bronchitis, like I do, bronchitis season is my vice in the wintertime. The idea of having bronchitis and COVID-19 is a combination that you really don't want to think about.
Sure. To reach out to you, Tacky, some good ways I'd like to ask you.
Yeah, 617-722-2014, 617-722-2014. I've been told by the staff that's been a very effective way of communication to us. We do use Google dialing. So, you may not see a recognized number from my staff, but we try to get back to you. You can email tackey.chan, tackey.chan, at mahouse.gov. Again, I've been, for example, getting bombarded by emails. I got like over 70 minimum emails regarding hotel workers and trying to figure out how to deal with recall of hotel workers if we ever come back online. Right now, a lot have been furloughed. They're being laid off permanently as the winter months come. So I've been getting a lot of emails on that. So I do suffer from email overload. So phone calls are still preferable. We got State Representative Tacky Chan Facebook. We put a lot of information up there. You can scroll down the long list to see maybe something will help you out, as well as tackychat.org. We put a lot of the service agencies and information there. That may save you some time from having to call my office or email me. So we do encourage people to try and look at my online services first. If it's not there, definitely give us a ring.
All right. Sounds good. Good to see you again. Thanks so much, Tacky.
Great to see you, Joe. And, so let's survive Friday the 13th, and I'll talk to you next Friday.
All right. Sounds good. Take care.